Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to talk about increasing the length of the gharara. Now, you may need to do that for many different kinds of reasons, and we will just have a look and see that, first of all, where can you increase the length from, and secondly, how much length you can increase in the gharara by the different methods that we are going to talk about. So there are two seams on the gharara. There is a seam where the waistband joins the upper part of the leg or the kunda, and then there's a second seam where the upper part of the leg joins the lower part of the leg, or the kunda joins the goat. So under this gota here is the seam here, which is present horizontally. The third part of the play of the gharara where length can be increased is the hem of the gharara. So this is another place where you can increase the hem. So as far as increasing the length is concerned, we cannot increase the length at this point, at the part where the kunda joins the goat. So here we cannot increase, and you must make sure that no matter which method you use to increase the length of the goat, this point remains slightly above the knee and not below the knee. Generally, the gharara, the traditional gharara, is designed in such a way that this part falls above the knee and the remaining part falls below the knee, and this gives the movement to the gharara as the person who is wearing the gharara walks. So as far as the waistband, this seam is concerned, you can unpick this seam here. You can unpick the seam and separate the waistband from the kunda. Now once you've done that, then you can increase the length of this part. So you can increase the length maximum of this part by 1 inch. And by doing that, what you will do is that you will actually change this part, change the waistband. So for example, if you have some leftover fabric, then you can take another piece of fabric and cut it so that the waistband is much longer as compared to this, and the width will remain the same. The width of the waistband will remain the same, but the length will increase by 1 inch. And then you put in a separate elastic around, and then you attach the waistband to the upper part or to the kunda. Now we come to the lower end of the garment, which is the hem of the garment, and here you can increase the length by different methods. So we'll go through these methods one by one. So here you have a swatch which has been cut on the bias. So it stretches from here, it stretches from here, and it stretches from here. Very much so like we cut the fabric when we are making the goat of the gharara. So this obviously is part of the fabric that is attached to the gharara, and this is the hem of the gharara. So the first thing you do when you want to increase the hem is to unpick the hem of the gharara. And once you've unpicked the hem, now you have a piece of fabric which you have lengthened the fabric. The amount of length that you will achieve by unpicking the hem will be maybe 1 inch or maybe 1.5 inch. Another thing that you have to take into consideration is that if it is an old gharara that you are trying to increase the length of, then this part may be a little bit damaged because of wear and tear, and so you may have to actually remove maybe 1/2 inch or maybe 1 inch before you start increasing the length. So that's the first step for lengthening the gharara, is to remove or unpick the hem of the gharara and iron it so that you get now a straight, nice piece of fabric. So now once you have unpicked the hem, then how are you going to finish the hem? So you can finish the hem by attaching a piece of bias binding. And here, as you can see, I've attached a piece of bias binding. So I've just taken a piece of fabric, which is about 2 inches in width, and then I've folded it in half, and then folded the halves into more halves, and just put the fabric on top of the edge here, and just put it there, pinned it, and stitched it. So this is a very simple and very effective way of increasing the length, to unpick the hem and then to attach this bias binding. By attaching the bias binding, you actually make the edge of the hem stronger, and you give it a little bit of strength as well as a little bit of structure. So this is the best way and the easiest way to increase the length, to unpick the hem and then to attach a bias binding. Another variation that you can have after you have unpicked the hem is to attach a, a braid or a gota at the end of the hem. And you can do that by different ways. You can either, if you have a broad enough gota, then you can actually fold it and you can attach it as a folded edge. Or if you have a very narrow gota, then you can attach one part to the front and one part to the back, thus making it nice and strong. And you can do that at the hem. And so this is another way where you can increase the hem, and you can also finish the hem by putting a piece of gota or a braid on it. So another way that you can finish off the hem of the fabric once you have unpicked it is to take a piece of fabric which is much wider and is cut on the bias, and then you attach it to the inside. So basically what you are doing is that you will take away about ½ an inch from the inside and you will attach it here, and then I've stay stitched it here. As you can see, it's been stay stitched, and then once it's been stay stitched, then it's folded over and it's stitched from the top. So now this is a good way to do it, but the important thing is that you have to remember that this is much wider than a narrow bias binding. So for example, this is about 2.5 inches in width, and so you have good enough, you have about 1.5 inches which is now facing on the inside. So why do this? Well, you can do this because it just looks pretty. If you have another fabric which is the contrasting fabric, looks very pretty. But the other reason is that it will give a lot of solid feel to the lower edge, and it will also have a solid look, as well as help the garment as it is hanging down. So it will give it structure, it will give it strength. And if you want to, use it as a facing with a fabric which is contrasting, then it will also look very pretty as the person walks. And if it turns up a bit, it will also look very pretty. So another way that you can actually enclose the hem or finish off the hem and at the same time increase the length of the fabric is to make a bias binding. And this bias binding is much wider than the previous bindings that we have talked about. Here the bias binding is roughly about 4 inches. So as you can see, it's like 1, 2, 3, almost 4 inches in width, and it's so what you do is you cut a bias binding which is 4 inches in width, and which is and then you catch the end of the hem inside this bias binding. So the bias binding has been prepared by, first of all, you cut the fabric on a bias which is 4 inches in width and equal to the length that you desire. And then once you've done that, then you fold it in the middle, and you fold the edges also ½ an inch, and then you attach it to the hem, the existing hem, ½ an inch of the hem, and then you pin it all the way through. Pin, because you have to pin, because this is on the bias and this is also on the bias, and now you are attaching one bias to another bias. So this is slightly more tricky as compared to the other methods that we have shown you, and slightly will take more time, more fabric, but it will not only finish off the hem, but it will also increase the length of the, so as you can see here, the length of the Gharara has been increased by 1.5 inch. So that's 1 inch and that's 1.5 inch. So that's good enough hem. So if you increase 1 inch of the waistband and 1.5 inches, you have gained 2.5 inches in the total length of the Gharara. So only thing is that at the end of the entire process, after you have stitched it, you may still get these few lines here, which will be very difficult to get rid of, even if you pin it very, very carefully. And this is like, for example, this is cotton fabric, so this is much more easier to handle. Plus, I very carefully pinned it almost at 1 inch difference, so that it was lying very, very well. But after I stitched it, then even then I got this slight puckering here, and so this has been stitched, this has been ironed, but still there's some puckering. If you have a walking foot, that might actually take care of this problem, because there will be no drag on the fabric. at the top end, and so you might get a better finish. And I would recommend that you use a walking foot when you are attaching this kind of bias edge, to not only to increase the length of the garment but also to finish the edge of the garment. Okay, now we come to the last method for increasing the length, and this is to attach a ruffle. Now in this particular situation, we have two colors. We have a yellow color at the top, and then we have a pink color at the bottom. So now the top fabric is cut on the bias, but the bottom fabric is cut on the straight grain. You can have the bottom fabric also on the bias, and you can also have it on a straight grain. Obviously straight grain will be easier to cut and easier to prepare and easier to attach as compared to a bias. So this is also another way that you can do it, and by this method you can increase the length by from 1.5 to about 2.5 inches. Here we have increased the length by 2.25 inches. So as you can see, it's 1 inch, 2 inch and 2.25 inches, or almost 2.5 inches. So you can increase it up to 3 inches, up to 4 inches, depending upon how much length you want, and depending upon the fact that the middle seam is still lying at just above the knee, and making sure that the garment still is looking as a natural and as a traditional garment. So as far as this extra fabric is concerned, you can, as I said before, I've cut it on the straight grain. So that means that this is straight grain. This is not a bias. So if you do that, it's not bias, it's just the straight grain. Now what I've done is that I took the bottom fabric 2 times the length of this fabric. So depending upon how much frill you want, you can adjust accordingly. So you can adjust the frill either 1.5 times the length of this length. So for example, if this is 8 inches, and if you want to attach the frill, then you will have to cut a piece of fabric which is like 16 inches long, or if you want twice the amount of frill and fullness, then you will cut 2 times or even 3 times. But the minimum that you can cut, or you have to cut, is about 1.5 times. So 1.5 to 2 times is the minimum that you have to cut to be able to get some kind of a flare and some kind of a ruffle at this point. So this looks very pretty. Again, you can have either a contrasting color, or you can have a color which is the same color, the same tone, but a different shade. So maybe a lighter green on a darker green, or a darker green on a lighter green, and similarly for all other colors. So this is also a very easy way to adjust or to increase the length. Not only that, but it is also an pretty way to, sometimes even when we are constructing the Gharara, then as part of the construct of the Gharara and as part of the design, we sometimes include a much wider frill within the goat of the Gharara to make it look really pretty and make it look really fancy. And sometimes the lower part may have a lot of embroidery on it or gota work on it, and it will look really very pretty. So this is an option. So here now we will bring the video to a close, and please subscribe to the video, press the like button, send your comments, share with family, share with friends, and if you want us to make a particular kind of a Gharara, or for a certain age or for a certain weight of a person, please let us know, and we look forward to your comments. Thank you and goodbye.